talk about collectors and the value they place on their books. Basically, I had a fella contact me. Seemed like a heck of a nice guy, local guy, claimed to be in the business for almost 30 years, and he came into my home, into the showroom here, and wanted to look at some of the old books. So we got talking, you know, a couple hours passed, and I was enjoying the company, and basically started looking through my books. We found a few flaws on some, as you always do with comic books. Some, you know, were beautiful. He was looking at a old round of Captain Marvel's, Wiz Comics, some rare stuff from the 40s and 50s. So basically, I have my valuations on my books to kind of see what I feel the books are worth, and keep a rough track of what's going on with the books. Not necessarily what I will sell a book for at all, by any means. You know, just an evaluation of what I feel the books are worth. And I'm always open to offers on my books. That's why I whatnot them and sell them on whatnot live auctions. So basically, you know, he brought in a short box full of books, and he had some bigger keys in there. I played dumb, as I always do, and said, "Wow, these are nice books. What are they?" He ended up, in particular, he had a book, Supergirl. Action Comics 252, I believe, first appearance of Supergirl. This is a Robert M. Overstreet current price guide that I'm using to it keeps track of what's important and what's not. So Action Comics 252, The Origin of Supergirl. In a 2.0 is an $800 US book, and it can range up to a $32,000 US book for this Action Comics number 252. Basically, he had a copy. It was missing a page inside, so it's incomplete. It had extensive damage to the cover. It was there. I mean, it was intact. The cover wasn't hanging off, but it was rough. Something that, you know, a normal standard collector would call a 0.5, maybe a 1.0 on the grade scale. Keeping in mind the 2.0 in the comic book Bible is at $800 on a book like this. So basically, he asked me what I valued my Captain Marvel books at. So I brought my Captain Marvel books out. I told him up. They came to $4,200 for the 12 books that he had picked out. These books, you know, I valued them at $4,200. He quickly cut them up, brought them down. You know, I told him, I said, well, he used my reverse psychology on me, saying, let's check on Overstreet and see what you think the books are worth. So we checked on Overstreet, you know, and they were running anywhere from $138 to 400 US in the range and price in the books. So I looked at the 12 books, you know, and I quickly told him, you know, I believe that they're worth $4,200, but I'd be willing to sell them for 2,000 Canadian, which is about 1,500 US, putting them at about 150 bucks a book. Now keep in mind that the bottom of the books was around $180 US, and the top ends were $400 or $500 on some of the books, $600. So 150 bucks a book, $1,500 Canadian is a fair price for a guy to steal the books at. Now I said I'd like to make a little bit on them. You know, I've pressed and cleaned them all. I've loaded them in top loaders. They are rare. He tried to tell me these books aren't rare. They're hard to find. Basically, you know, these books at 200 bucks a pop would come to about $2,400. So I hit him with $2,500 for the books, half of what I felt they were worth at $4,000. He came back with an offer of $1,500. That's fine. So, you know, I kind of said, you know, I kind of want to hold on them. I don't really need to sell them. I'd like to keep the books. Basically, I went over to his box. I asked if I could take a look. I took a look through. I pulled out his Action Comics 252, and I said, well, I'm interested in this one. What would you sell me this one for? Right away, immediately, you know, you could see his pupils dilate. There was a bunch of tension. He says, you know, this is a $4,000 book. The one book with the missing page and the damages to it is $4,000. Keep in mind, it's $800 in a 2.0 in Robert M. Overstreet. He quickly cited, you know, eBay prices, how much the books are going for in the market. I took a look. I couldn't see anything with a missing chunk out of the page and a destroyed cover that would go anywhere remotely near $4,000. The grade, you know, if the book was a $4,000 copy, it would have to be close to a 6.0, 6.5. You know, in the beginning of the conversation, he stated, you know, how he doesn't believe in the current market trends. He knows what books are worth. He's been in the business for being 50 years old. You know, he's owned comic book stores for 35 years. So I guess he somehow started comic book stores when he was 15 years old, which I find hard to believe. You know, so there was a bunch of tells along the way where I could see that the guy was kind of, you know, a little bit all over the place and just another collector pretending to be somebody. Probably this short box that he brought in full of, you know, it had an old flash book in it. It had some old EC books, books that were out of the 50s, you know, rare books, but they were all rough. He told me they were his doubles. At this point, I'm going to say, you know, got people telling you they have multiple copies of one book. I don't know if I believe it, especially in this really old stuff. I mean, I've got 750,000 books here, and I don't have doubles in some of the 1940s books or triples where I'm upgrading them. Most of the time, this is a story that guys use to try to get a deal off you. So I'm already catching the play with where this is going. So I just used the reverse psychology. He tried it on me and he said, well, what's your Captain Marvel book? I had a specific book of Black Magic. I'll show it to you. This Black Magic book here, I've got $1,000 value on it. It's a really nice copy. And I've never seen one from Prize Group in this condition. You know, the spine's got it's a little bit rough in that. I've got 1,000 Canadian on it. This book, in reality, is probably worth about, I would say, $600 to $700 to a collector. The book value on it could be $1,000, but it's not, unfortunately. This is what you call a current market trend price if a book like this was to come up for auction or for sale. So I quickly told him that I would accept $250 to $300 for this book, which I think is more than reasonable considering, based on his knowledge, what he was telling me about current market trends, you know, how he didn't follow them, but yeah, he went back to it when it came to picking on his books. He went back to this saying that, you know, basically, well, what's this book worth in Overstreet? And, you know, we came up with a price of around $250 to $300 range. He seemed happy with that. So when I shot him the value of my books at $4,200, he proceeded to tell me that I was 70% over market price on these books, and he knew everything, more than Robert M. Overstreet of Gemstone Publishing, apparently. Which, you know, I always say, guys, is fine if you want to go over a book and value it based on a movie that's coming out or an actor or, you know, somebody's opinion, or somebody needed a mortgage payment or an alimony payment, and all of a sudden they stick the book on eBay for $5,000 and a bunch of boobs follow the trend, and then next thing you know, that becomes a market for that week on that book. Okay, that's fine if you're a quick scammer, a quick book flipper, you're trying to make a buck or rip somebody off. By all means, if you want to do that, do it. But don't do it around the caveman. I'm too smart for that stuff, guys. I've been doing this a long time, all kinds of different business. So calling his bluff, I went into his box, pulled out a Supergirl, explained to him about grade and condition, which he claimed to know, claimed to be a CGC guy. I never heard of his business, seen him on here before on the CGC website, never seen it anywhere. Told me basically that, you know, his Supergirl book was worth $4,000, yet my Black Magic that I feel is worth $1,000 is only worth, you know, $200, $250. And I said, you know, if you're going to agree with me that this is what this book is worth to a collector willing to pay for it, how can your ripped up Action Comics 252 be worth $4,000? He proceeded not to say, which I would have said if I was him, it's a key, you know, so it's worth a little more. But I mean, in my experience, you know, being a live seller on whatnot, if you've got a book with damages and missing pages, correct me if I'm wrong, collectors, no one's going to pay for it. No one wants a book that's incomplete or that has extensive damage to the cover. You know, and if a book's nice, I'll gladly pay for it. So where I became frustrated and ended up throwing him out of my home, which I usually do to dealers and collectors that come because they get overwhelmed by, you know, almost looking at 1 million vintage comic books. And it ends up becoming a pissing contest between me and somebody else. So I looked through his box, you know, and every single one of his books was $2,000 to $4,000, you know, of the 60 or 70 books that he had brought, you know. But when he wanted my books, my valuations were inaccurate. They were 70% overpriced, and, you know, he wanted to get them at 25, like 75% off. But yet when I used the same grading book to price his books and explained to him that that copy of Supergirl he had was worth maybe 700 Canadian to 1,000 Canadian, and I'd be willing to pay him $500 for it, he got really upset, said that he'd been offered $1,350 and turned it down. I told him, you know, if you can get $1,350 for a book that's missing pages and in that kind of shape, by all means, because a real collector knows how to use an Overstreet, knows how to use CGC's grading book, and use Robert M. Overstreet's grading books and put a grade on a comic book. Guys, it goes back to what the caveman is trying to tell you. You cannot rely on a current market trend unless you're looking to make a quick buck from an uneducated person. If you're dealing with the old boys like I do, guys that have money and have the old books that everybody's trying to get or hoping they're still going to find in the rough, you got to really know what you're talking about. You've got to really know how to grade a book, and you've got to really know that the value is in the condition of the book, not in just having the book. There's lots of copies out there. This guy actually proceeded to tell me that he had a coverless Superman #1 that he had paid $15,000 for 10 years ago. I don't know if I believe this, guys. I mean, I've had coverless books worth $10, $20, $30,000, and I couldn't get $100 to $200 for them. And that was with 1,000 different people looking at it live on whatnot. So I'm going to say that 15 grand for a coverless Superman 1. If you can find somebody, obviously he bought it, so I mean, somebody got him to buy it for 15 grand. I myself wouldn't buy a coverless book for anything over $1,000. I don't care what book it is. That's ridiculous to me. A couple $100, sure, why not? 500 maybe. I'd have a Superman 1 with no cover for $500. Other than that, it's worthless to me. I'm a collector, and I'm sure it is to you guys too. So basically, the bottom line is people come down to the cave and they think that, you know, they know more than I do. I'm not saying I know more than them, but I am saying treat me fair. Collecting. When you're out looking for books, make sure that you're getting the best condition that you can afford, and make sure that your dreams, your goals, and your negotiations are realistic. If you have books that are in poor condition, you have to swallow it and realize, hey, you might have paid too much for a book. It might not be worth what you're hoping to get for it. And remember, guys, a book is only worth what a collector's willing to pay for it. These are the books here. I'm just going to show them to you quick. I know you guys saw this one from the Press and Clean video. So we got 475, 175. This one had a staple pull. Still a rare book, and the cleanliness and, you know, how nice the number 43 Captain Marvel Jr. is brings the value up on it even with a pull. The rarity, you know, he's trying to tell me that these books are not rare compared to America, which I know, but I mean in condition. America has a much larger population than Canada, and a lot of their books are in rougher shape, guys, no disrespect, just because they've been owned by more people. They've went through more hands than the smaller population up here where the books were sold. So these books total about $4,200. I was willing to let them go for around 25, which I thought was fair, even drop it down to 2, but all I asked for was that I would equally be treated the same with his books, you know, when gauging condition, and that I would be able to have the chance to buy a few of them that I could have cleaned and pressed and maybe made look a little better. You know, but when somebody's holding their price compared to, and you're willing to negotiate on a price, there's no deal. It's just not happening. So be realistic, collectors, when you're out there looking at books and when you're making people offers. Remember, a comic book is only worth what a collector's willing to pay for it. And if you can get more money for your book somewhere else, then, you know, go get the money somewhere else. Don't try to talk somebody down. It's a very poor habit, and it can escalate things very quickly into a point where it becomes sour and nobody gets any books, and it becomes a waste of everybody's time. Thanks for listening to Comic Talk 2. We'll be back with more Caveman's Comic Talk coming at you soon. Remember to subscribe and like the channel.